it's from Trinidad, and it's music by one of the most well-known figures from the Caribbean, the Mighty Sparrow. And he's a storyteller, right? Calypso music is a music that you may hear when you go down to the Caribbean, particularly the Eastern Caribbean, Trinidad and other places. And it's a storytelling music. It's very similar, in my mind, to country music. And there's a lot of work to be done actually on the connections between the musical forms, because during the World Wars, particularly World War II, the U.S. had bases down in the Caribbean. And so it was blasting the radio stations down there. So there will be a lot of connections between country music and calypso music. So there's a lot to say. I also have, I'm teaching a Maymester course right now where we have students visiting from Northern Ireland. There's also a connection between country music, of course, and Irish music around, again, storytelling. So I was just playing that just for a little bit of entertainment. So, good afternoon. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much for braving, the downpour, or braving the after the downpour. So not deciding when the downpour came, like, oh, it's going to be horrible, I won't be able to make it, it's not going to happen. So I'm really appreciative of your being here. I hope that the presentation and the conversation that we'll be able to have will validate your taking the time to come. So my name is Ifeoma Nwankwo. I'm the director of the program in American Studies here at Vanderbilt. I'm also an associate professor in the Department of English with affiliations in many other departments, including teaching and learning, medicine, health and society, Latino-Latina studies, and Latin American studies. So my work is basically on the Americas, particularly the Anglophone and Hispanophone Americas, about relations, interactions between the peoples of the Americas in the areas of identity, ideology, music, culture, tourism, everything, all of that. So I talk with my mom and other people about the fact that when I moved to Nashville, all my older relatives, all of us, when I was living in Ann Arbor, they had no interest in coming to Ann Arbor, but I moved to Nashville and they're like, oh, I have to come. Why is that? Because these older West Indian people love country music and they grew up watching the Grand Ole Opry or listening to the Grand Ole Opry. So I'm interested in those kinds of connections. I think about the ways that Sobro here south of Broadway is very similar to the beach, what I call the beach in Jamaica. So in Jamaica, we market and package the beach, right? So people think that's all there is to the place is the beach. Same thing with Nashville. But it's very important that we market it well, right? Because that's the economy. So same thing with Nashville. People come to Nashville thinking it's only Sobro, and we have to say, no, it's more, right? So my work is on those connections. I'm currently working on a few books on Panama, past and present, because the U.S., of course, built the Panama Canal in between 1904 and 1914, and there are individuals there who were the descendants of the builders of the canal who came from the British Caribbean. So my work is about the Americas. I'm always kind of interested. I think about Rum and Coca-Cola, the song by the Andrews Sisters. Anyone here familiar with that song? No, people think about it. It's a song actually about the U.S. presence in the Caribbean. So what my particular love right now is this thing, cultivating innovation through intergenerational wisdom. It's something distinctive. It's the work that my soul must have. And today I'm just going to spend some time introducing you to a couple related projects that I've created out of that interest, in which and students are deeply involved in this. Is Voices from Our America and The Wisdom of the Elders. Anyone familiar with these? Anyone heard these when they were children? Be prepared. Who can't hear will feel. Turn off the light. You're wasting the current. If your conscience is clear, you have nothing to fear. Doesn't matter. It's all going in the same place. I grew up with my grandfather. So I heard that all the time. My grandfather was retired. It was a wonderful gift. I grew up with him saying all of these things and teaching me language. He was a railway station master in Jamaica in the 1930s. So, and he was someone who picked up a bit of Portuguese. He picked up a bit of Chinese. He picked up a bit of Spanish. He picked up a bit of everything. And because I was with him after he retired, I got to get all of that. So much so that when he was ill and when he was had become senile, he did not remember who I was. But when I started speaking Spanish, we connected. This is not something, Jamaica is an English-speaking country. He did not learn Spanish in school. Right? But this is someone I just was so thankful to be able to spend time with. And so the work that I do now is an honor of him. It's to try to create opportunities for everyone to be able to learn from and benefit from the wisdom of the elders. Not everyone nowadays gets to grow up with a grandparent in the house. Not everyone, even if they grow up with a grandparent in the house, they will kind of devalue them. Just like, oh, it doesn't matter. So I want to find a creative way to integrate that knowledge, to integrate the things that the grandparent normally would teach into education, right? Because everyone has to go to school. You might leave grandma at home and go to school. So if we integrate it into what's going on at school, K through 12, college, graduate education, the training of our doctors, right? Then we can really benefit from that wisdom. And we will see the elders and be able to give that back and say, I see you, I value you, I treasure you. And we will get rid of this kind of idea that past a certain age you just don't matter. In that, I'm trying to call attention to so many other cultures who do that, right? But trying to figure out what ways in our culture here in the U.S. can we do that? What ways can we integrate the wisdom of the generations into education on multiple levels? Okay. So just me and my grandfather, Mr. Percival George Key. So it's advancing intergenerational and intercultural wisdom. There is so much knowledge and so much wisdom all around us. And we negate that knowledge, right? And we lose out on that knowledge. And that, I'm arguing, restricts our ability to truly innovate, to truly think outside of the box. If you are only paying attention to what is known, if you are only paying attention to what is valued, if you are only paying attention to what is already recognized, then you're just going to kind of move a little bit, incrementally. But it's when you say, there's something there that someone had missed, right? That's when you're able to innovate. And so I understand intergenerational wisdom and intergenerational engagement, right? And engagement with communities that are kind of left out as a path to innovation, as a way forward. So that's my thing. The life-changing power of creating your own autobiography. So I'm a literature scholar. Right? I know what I just said may sound very sociology, anthropology. I'm a literature scholar. I'm a scholar focused on anthropology and on autobiography. On autobiography. So how does someone tell their story? Why does someone tell their story? What are the silences? Right? I understand our telling our own stories is full of silences, is full of digressions. Right? So they're not talking about clean oral history where, okay, I'm writing down everything you say as factual information, but I understand you as an imaginative author. And what you're telling me, some of it will be factual, but some of it will be you painting something. Painting something that you imagine. So the same way that we would analyze a Monet painting, the same way that we would analyze a Rembrandt, I believe we should also analyze autobiographies. We should also analyze the way that we talk about ourselves. right? And figure out how to operationalize that in the classroom and beyond. So that's my interest, that's my passion, and as I said before, that is all due to my grandfather. So the projects, Voices from Our America and Wisdom of the Elders. The umbrella is Voices from Our America. Wisdom of the Elders is one project underneath that. 200 interviews and counting. That's my way of saying it. It's really 250 by now, but we'll keep it at that. Because it is me and my research team doing interviews, but you also have students using that methodology. And I'll talk about the methodology in a second. Using that methodology to conduct interviews and enriching the range of primary sources that are available. So that students are not simply reading books written by scholars like me, but that you leave this place having created new knowledge. All right, so for example, my classes on immigration in Nashville, students create material that then becomes material that students in future classes use, right? Because there are histories of communities that are not present, that have not been put in a book, right? Only place it exists is Vanderbilt students have done it. So that you don't have to wait till you're 35 to produce something new. You can produce something new all along the way. And at the same time, you are recognizing that other people around you, the people in your family, have been producing something new their whole lives. And you learn to value them. I cannot tell you how many times I've had students come into the classroom and we talk about this methodology and they're thinking about their final project. Who am I going to interview for my final project? Well, maybe I'll talk to my grandma. And then they go talk to their grandma. And it's like the grandmother was just waiting for one day this person to ask. And they get all of this information and they come back to me, Professor, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I knew we were Danish, but I didn't know this, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know this, and I didn't know that. Right? One student kind of vaguely knew something. She was Greek and Japanese. Right? For the project, she talked to her grandmother about being in an internment camp. Do you know how that felt for the grandmother? To be valued and treasured. And so it's not that the student was a bad person before, it's just that the way we structured our world and our life, it's just, okay, you're past, and the things that matter are books and important people and the historical figures, not you. But the methodology I'm encouraging recognizes each and every person as having knowledge, as having capacity for innovation, as having innovated. My argument is that if you have lived past 65, or even, I'm 43 now, but definitely if you've lived past 65, you've got some knowledge that the rest of us need to know, that we need to understand, especially if you've lived past 65 and you can still smile and love. That is, right?
You're a man.
Amen. But you know what I'm saying? What it takes to even get there and not just be mad and not just be all the pain and all the hurt and everything, that's amazing. We need to know, we need to understand that. I call it, for lack of a better, I call it the Prozac. Right? We're looking for all these. My mother worked for Johnson & Johnson for years. It was pharmaceuticals, so drug discovery has been my life. So everybody's digging for that, digging for that. It already exists in many ways. Right? We're talking about wellness. There are mental health promoting practices and knowledges that have been present and that are already present. And we need to it is our job, as I understand it, as universities and as professors, to figure out how to put that into action. Right? So that's my understanding of what we do. So we've done, this is old, well not old, but I put a basic number because every time I can't change it every time. But we've done many events, teacher workshops for teachers, exhibits in various communities, right? We have a digital archive, community exhibits, and this project right now is the one that is most, is closest to my heart, is autobiographies of pathbreakers, pioneers, and preservers. So you know that older woman, possibly older man, but typically an older woman in your neighborhood who has all the newspaper clippings, right, from all the way back? That's the person whose story I think we should have, right, who we should talk to. Because typically, again, we go to the institutional museums, which are good and important, but then you miss that, right? You miss that stuff. So those are the preservers. The pathbreakers, the person who was the first to do X, Y, and Z. Right? My partner, for example, was the first to integrate Franklin County schools in Franklin County, Tennessee. Right? That person, they're not going to be in the big narrative. Right? The pioneer. We have, in terms of faculty, we have a number of faculty pioneers here on campus. Baker, Hortense Spillers, people who were the first in a field. My colleague Cecilia Tichy, one of the kind of founding figures in terms of American studies and American literary studies. Right? So calling attention to that, not taking those people for granted, recognizing the capacity for innovation that is present, and recognizing the fact that they have already authored text. They may not be between the pages, between the covers of a book. So that's what we can do. So thinking about expanding understandings of what knowledge is valuable. What knowledge is valuable. Right, so yes, the knowledge produced by people like me and scholars is important, but we must understand that as one among a range of knowledges that are important. I'll say this later, but I'll say it now. For all the problems we have in the world, we need all hands on deck. Right, so saying, oh no, you're overseas, no, we're moving on. What? That makes no sense. All hands on deck. You know something, you have something, right? Let's all have a conversation. Right? And we all have wisdoms to share. Importantly, wisdom is not only what is said, it is the unsaid. How many times, which again, if you grew up around your older adult, your silence speaks. Oh my gosh. Right? Silence can say to you, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. Oh, she doesn't like that person because that person did this. I want students to work with students to kind of be able to interpret those things as they appear in life and text. It's a capacity for reading what's around you. That again would be automatic in kind of the olden days when you grew up with grandma, you need to do that. But how do we integrate that knowledge, that ability to read subtlety, that ability to read silence, right, into education? So that's part of it. So therefore, interaction is crucial. Intergenerational and intercultural interaction is absolutely crucial. Not just, hey, you are an exotic object, but hearing you hearing me, us connecting as human beings, right? So that we are exchanging information and we come to see each other's fullness. So that's what I do. So I'm going to give you a little bit. So this is one of the writers who inspired me, Paul Marshall. And I'll give you a moment to read this. What she's talking about is how she learned from just sitting around her older aunts and mother in the kitchen. She didn't get to say anything because, as my grandfather would say, children should be seen and not heard. But she talks about how much she learned through that silence. very important there, where she uses the phrase intellectual and political acumen. Right? For these women to be functioning in that world, that they had that. Because they had to be able to analyze what they were allowed to do, what they weren't allowed to do, what the rules are, and adjust on a dime, right? In order to be able to move forward. She talks here a bit about control, and the last quotation is particularly what I want to call your attention to. For me, sitting over in the corner, being seen but not heard, which was the rule for children in those days, it wasn't only what the woman talked about, the content, but the way they put things, their style, the insight, irony, wit, and humor they brought to their stories and discussions, and their poets' inventiveness and daring with language, which of course I could only sense but not define back then. Paul Marshall is an award-winning writer, author of 10 novels. Her first novel was published in 1959. And the subtitle of this is The Making of a Writer. And so she's arguing that her ability to become a writer is owed to these women. And that's why she calls them the poets in the kitchen. Now, typically they would never be recognized as poets because they didn't write in, something in iambic pentameter and all of that. But she's arguing that they were. So individuals, these are scholars like writers like Marshall, who students read and we talk about, and they are inspired. So what we're trying to do, my goal is to kind of index, cultivate, create, circulate, and celebrate innovation. I've talked a little bit about that. Innovation comes not from memorizing only, just memorizing what's already known. I say this as someone who came from, in my early years, a British education, which is very much about memorizing. So I understand the value of memorizing. I can recite my times tables and lots of things, prayers, all kinds of things at the drop of a hat. But going beyond that, which is what I learned in terms of my U.S. education, going beyond that is also crucial. So I want the students to become innovators, to push themselves, right? To push beyond their comfort zone and not worry about grades, which is hard. I hate grades. I think grades. Anyway, so this is one of the quotations. I'm going to be showing a few of these every so often as I go through. Treat people the way you want to be treated. So whenever we do an interview for Wisdom of the Elders or Voices from Our America, we ask the elders and the younger people, Voices also includes younger people, what message do they have, right? And so we create quote books with these words of wisdom, with the photo and the words. And so this is. So imagine a lesson created around that. Imagine Miss Diane Smith, who lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in the classroom talking with students. Not from the perspective of, shaking her finger, but hearing all about Miss Smith's life. Right? And it's amazing, especially the younger kids when we do community part, they are so interested. Right? They are so interested because, you did that? What is that? Right? They want to learn. In the little corner with my peach dress. That's very important. This was in 1970 something. These are all my aunts. That's the other thing I wanted to see. All my aunts are on the right side, and my grandfather. 50th. And so the part of the project I'll speak about really briefly before jumping to the Middle Tennessee part is Panama. I mentioned earlier a little bit about Panama, the U.S. presence in the Panama Canal. So I went to Panama for the first time in 1998. I had always heard about Panama because being of Jamaican descent, you always hear about Panama because people went from Jamaica and Barbados to Panama to build the canal. So you always grow up hearing about somebody's uncle or somebody who went there and came back. But I went there for the first time in 1998, and that's where I met Miss Carmen. So that's when this picture was taken. Miss Carmen changed my life. She didn't kind of sit there and tell me her life story or anything. Again, it was just observing. She and her best friend, Miss Elsie, had been teachers in the Panama Canal Zone in the 40s and 50s, right? So they had gone through the Brown versus Board of Ed transition. They had stayed friends all those years, right? Stayed connected. And so Miss Carmen inspired me to create Voices from Our America. Now in '98, I was just finishing my PhD, and I was entering a tenure track job at the University of Michigan. So I had the idea for Voices, and I had to put it on hold, which is what I'm trying to prevent other scholars from having to do. I had to put it on hold because this kind of work is not valued as a literary scholar. I'm supposed to be focusing on books. All right, so Miss Carmen inspired me, and I had this thing, and I had to kind of put it on hold. And then I published my book in 2005, got tenure, everything, moved to Vanderbilt, and Voices from Our America and Wisdom of the Elders was really able to take off. But I always like to show Miss Carmen because, again, when we are writing academic papers, we are supposed to cite, right? Include citations of the people who we're quoting. Right? Always. So this is Panama. Panama has papers, yes. Like other things. So the interviews, again, we've done a ton of interviews there. I'm writing 3 books on Panama because it's so much. There's so much there. One on African Americans who worked at the Panama Canal Zone. One on contemporary writers, and one that's just on the interviews with different generations. So one of the issues is that the older adults there feel that the younger generation is not remembering the history, is not remembering how much their community suffered, and it's kind of not paying attention like they should be. So there's a lot of that going on. More words of wisdom. And the one in Spanish, of course, is from Panama. So the products of the work in Panama have included various student projects. We did oral history competitions at schools there, where the kids had to interview someone from the community and create a presentation, and then they gave presentations and judges. It's like a beauty pageant, I mean, but probably projects. And the judges sat and analyzed and decided who wins and who loses, right? But everyone won in front of the whole school. Right, so you bring the whole school together, right, and the students are celebrated for recognizing the history of their community. All right, let me pause there and see if anyone has any questions at this.
How did Ms. Carmen inspire you?
So she and Miss Elsie, they were so energized and so energetic, and kind of. They were also reflecting on their days as teachers and this student and that student and how hard it was. Because when Brown versus Board of Ed happened, remember the Panama Canal Zone was U.S. property. So the schools were segregated. Right? So everything that happened, the one-room schoolhouse, all of that was there. So these women, just like the woman I talked to in Rutherford County here, were the pillars. So just hearing them talk about their experiences. So hearing those horrible experiences and seeing how much joy and energy they still had. I mean, you see, I mean, it's beautiful. That was amazing to me. That was amazing to me. I said, oh no, we have to convey this amazingness, right? So the combination of those two things, and the fact that she and Elsie, they just took themselves for granted. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Don't you know how amazing? What are you talking about? And so I understood we have a platform here as university people or as publishers, or if anyone has a kind of a platform, and so I feel like we should use it. So I promised in my mind at that time that I would give respect to Ms. Nwankwo. I'm not going to talk to her. Needless to say, we can go on forever about this. Yeah.
I was just wondering, I remember when we were talking in class before this, you said that the youngest Panamanians
Yes.
were not interested in maintaining some of the indigenous languages.
Yes.
And within their presentations, did any of them talk about languages and how the languages affected their culture?
Yeah, and so they still talk about it. It's very interesting. So and that's what one of my books is about, is the intergenerational dimension of it, because the older generation feels like the younger generation is not connecting to English, right? That the younger generation believes, as far as the older fleet, has drank the Kool-Aid and thinks they have been accepted into being Panamanian. So they reject, i.e. the younger generation rejects English and only speaks Spanish and will not speak English in public, because English is identified with being foreign, with being not really Panamanian. And so that's the frustration of the older generation, that don't you know what's coming? Don't you see that thing that just happened? They haven't accepted you. But I would argue some of that is going on, but what is also going on is what I call intergenerational misrecognition. Meaning that they're dealing with they're fighting different beasts. And so they can't, and that's also similar to what's going on here, so they can't necessarily recognize that both of them have come up with strategies to deal with the beast that they're fighting in the moment. For the younger generation, kind of embracing Panamanianness is how they best deal with the beast that they are fighting, which is a different beast than what the older generation is dealing with. But I think both generations are a little bit right. But that's basically what's going on. The younger generation, for the most part, will not connect with English or with that history, and that paves the older generation. By older, I mean like born before 43. Really. And that's a generation that was, and this is older than, were inspired by the civil rights movement. They were actually in many cases involved in the civil rights movement because they were moving back and forth between Panama and the United States.
You had people that went from Jamaica to Panama.
Yes.
And then came back, came back to Jamaica.
Some, very few.
Yeah.
Very few. Mm-hmm.
We lived in Jamaica,
Oh, so
and
you know.
I met a man, he's in his 90s now. But I didn't show him the appreciation at the time. I didn't understand the situation of him going and working on the canal and then coming back and better through church. But, as you're saying, there was a richness of value, a story to be listened to.
Yes.
But as 30 years ago, not having the sensitivity or taking the time to listen.
Mm-hmm. But
That's where I'm listening to you now. That's the values that myself or you need to put in this generation, that they're willing to listen or know that there's a story that's going to be lost because the man's passed.
Exactly.
And I can't ask him, what did you go through? And you did come back. But there's pockets of people in Panama are still maintaining English, maintaining their Jamaican.
Absolutely, but you did get a little bit of him.
Yeah.
And so pass that on. Because I'm sure he had a personality that you will not forget. I'm sure he was a storyteller in just his being, because the guys, there's a particular strength and personality that led to guys being successful going there. And so, yeah, they're very similar in that sense. Because think about what it takes.
Yes, the sacrifice.
You alluded to the fact that there's a mistrust lack of ability to communicate on both sides. So how do you tell a story
Yeah.
that would embrace the young? How would you tell a story if you were the young?
Right.
Tell a story to the elder. Because the storytelling, I think, is the key. So how would you tell the story?
Absolutely. The key is that you can't tell the story. You have to put people in a space and a situation with each other so that you're telling stories together, so that you understand the threads and the connections. So you're not creating a book and just giving it to the younger person, but you're bringing the older person into the classroom and having them sit together one-on-one and share information. Because if you do that kind of 30,000 feet thing, both will close off. And you will fall into, and you know, I mean, you fall into the kind of trap of, oh, those young people don't know what they're talking about. Oh, those old people don't know what you're talking about, and you shut off. So you get them to create the story together, or they create the story separately and put them into conversation. So, for example, one of the things that we've done through Wisdom of the Elders, through which I created a semester for older adults, where they spend 6 weeks 18 weeks working on their autobiographies, 6 weeks on genealogy, doing research and creating a book of their genealogy with each other, having fun and enjoying. 6 weeks on visual art and painting, and 6 weeks on community history, researching and writing books on community history. Right? They're doing that. And then at the end of those those 3 sessions, then they engage with students at Vanderbilt. And they come to, and I have the video to show you, they come to Vanderbilt for an exhibit. And the exhibit, we've had it a few times, and the elders definitely want to come back, in Rand Hall, the dining hall. And so you have students, you would be surprised, walking up and just asking, because there's something tangible there. There's a painting, there's a picture. Tell me about that. What's that? Or they'll just be walking by, pretending like they're not paying attention, just flipping through the book, and something will grab them. And so they'll connect in that way. It is amazing. The power of art, the power of human engagement, kind of seeing each other and connecting with each other is key. And we've done this kind of intergenerational thing from younger kids all the way to older adults. And so the exhibit is one way. Another is we also have exhibits in the community out of which that material comes. And so last year, one of the things that we did is we had the older adult exhibit, and we had a scavenger hunt where we had the young people, and they're high schoolers, pick a question out of a fishbowl. Right? So there's no your question is unique, so you can't copy from anybody else. Your question is unique, and you pick the question out, and you have to go to the older adult whose name is on there and get that question answered. All right, and you actually get money for that, because that's how people do it in school, and they love it. Right? At first it was about and then it was just amazing. I took pictures because it's just they're so excited, and so they're running around because you're creating competition between the students, right? And you're creating interest. And these are not one-word answer questions. These are questions like, get the story of Miss blah blah blah, the experience at the church in 1975. So you have to hear the whole story and you have to write it down. So there's kind of 2 levels of processing to getting that information. And this is where the health piece comes in. If you walk with Miss Such and Such hand in hand to the door and back, you get additional points, right? Because we're also dealing with the blood pressure and the blood sugar and all of that. So those are 2 examples of things we've done. The third I will share with you is we have had students create performance pieces based on the older adult story. So and they didn't meet the older adult. Right, they just read the transcript and hear the audio. We have so many creative students here at Vanderbilt, from Blair and other places, and they create performance pieces. Some of them create dances, they create a skit, right? Then again, it's a certain level of processing of the information that it takes in order to be able to produce that. And when the elders came and saw that, they're just, that's it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You heard me, you saw me.
Yeah, when you mentioned church, I
Yes.
come from a culture in which the intergenerational succeeds because of the church that we attend. I agree.
Okay, I was gonna say
Yeah,
that,
and
yeah.
that,
I just went to East.
so it's just become a very, for us, a very easy transition. And even my 3 grandsons, one of whom is here, are very close to me because, not only because of that, but that's one of them.
Absolutely.
And it's many, and I've always felt the church is always proud of its Sundays, which is unusual. Part of it, I'm convinced, even though I've had arguments with people, is because they're there for their ethnicity more so than their
Exactly.
religion.
No, that makes sense. I just went to Easter last week, so I guess this is my red X. But absolutely, that absolutely makes sense. And there's so many churches that would like to be able to do that, and so many churches that are struggling to figure out how to pull in the younger generation. I have a whole package I'd like to kind of talk with them about, and I know there are people in each and every church who are working on undertakings to do that. But in that case, and in the case of other religions that are tied to an ethnicity, it's an extra pull. But when you have a situation in some cases, like with the Panamanian situation, where being tied to that ethnicity is seen as a negative, that it may end up superseding, I want to connect to my ethnicity, but then I will be mocked for it and I will be treated horribly. So even though I want to go and connect, I won't, right? Because I don't want, there are other costs associated with my connecting with my connecting with it. As I said, we have the Northern Ireland students here right now. I'm doing a class on civil rights movements in the U.S. and Northern Ireland, and talking to them about the role religion plays, right? So that even if you want to connect with someone who's Catholic and you're Protestant, or vice versa.
About the help and walking
Yes.
to the door, I know you, I think you may have skipped some steps or else I didn't get it. Can you explain that again in terms of the help with walking somebody to
Sure.
the door?
Sure. So there are two things. My argument is that older adults have mental health promoting practices.
Okay.
Already exists. But they may have high blood pressure, they may have diabetes, but they have mental health promoting practices. The younger person has the physical health.
Okay.
The older adult has the mental health. So by having the child get extra points for walking with the older person, so the older person is having to move, right? Because exercise and the kind of the impact of exercise on the body, they are exchanging, in a way, exchanging abilities and exchanging wisdom. Come on, Grandma, let's go. Let's go walk. Right. So it's dealing with the fact that of course with age comes particular physical infirmities and physical challenges. Yeah. So did that.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was an additional thing, and it's also a way that we get funding. Because this work by itself, it was just, older adults are really important, can I get funding to do things with older adults? That by itself is not gonna fly, but connecting it to health disparities and connecting it to, gerontology, right? I partner with geriatricians. That is key, because geriatricians know more than anyone. What's going on.
To answer the question, I got the part about the health, but the mental from the older community, would that be in the exchange or the information that they're going to?
Exactly. This happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it.
Okay.
Like, or like I was talking about Miss Carmen, seeing her was a model for me. Okay, this is how you deal with challenges, right? There are going to be things that are holding you back. There are going to be things that are confronting you. I'm listening to how she's talking about these making it through. And so this is what we can do as teachers, is helping a student kind of analyze those threads and pull them out. Because naturally, it'll just kind of go past you. But if I give a sheet, when you're listening to the interview, pay attention to this, pay attention to that, pay attention to this, right? What does Miss Carmen deal with? How does she, what are the coping skills she puts into action? How can you put that in? Have you had a challenge in your life? But again, those are things that would be, again, were automatic, right? If you're growing up with perhaps, in some families, you're growing up with grandma and you're hearing, you're learning that, you're like, okay, my auntie, grandma dealt with this, and she dealt with that. But this is a way of kind of creating that.
I just love this. I just love this because there's the wellness program, something women
Exactly,
really
exactly.
consider, and right now we're in the, not anymore, but you can talk to Jason Steins about the resilience program, and he's talking about using these types of narratives to like create resiliency within individuals.
This
Their own
project-
stories.
This project has been very
Yes.
inspiring across campus.
I had this observation, and I was
Yeah.
wondering if you shared it or.
Yeah.
When my kids were really young,
Uh-huh.
my husband's mom was dead, and my mom was disabled. And I remember growing up, and there were all of these women, older women in the community that helped take care of me. And I kept looking for that when my kids were younger. And the older women that I saw were not interested in being elders. They were interested in, I don't know what they were interested in,
Exactly.
staying young or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And
That thing.
so I think part of it, the reason the younger generation doesn't have it is because the older generation wasn't giving it or wasn't sharing that. And the women that you talk about, were they the kind of people that looked at younger moms and said, can I help you, or send Johnny down here, or what did you
So
find
this
in
is
that
why,
regard?
the answer to your question is precisely why this kind of undertaking is significant and needed in a university setting. Because
Okay.
we have the skills to be able to kind of analyze what's going on, whereas the community center that we work, they don't have time to kind of figure out the best method to get Miss such and such involved with this, right?
Okay.
They just need the program to happen.
Okay.
But we can kind of, and this is what we've done, kind of figure it out. I've written articles about particular kind of methods of silence, dealing with silence, right? Dealing with, I'm an outsider. I'm not from Rutherford County. I'm not from Panama. I'm not from these places. So there's a particular methodology and patience in terms of relationship building that it takes. I started a youth program in Murfreesboro in 2009. This program started in 2012. So it's about recognizing, yes, that closedness and that resistance, which comes out of it's survival skill sets. Like, I need my life because my life was taken away. I've been given to people my whole life. Now I need to just do and be. And so that is fed. That desire to kind of do and be is fed by having these workshops where the older adults are together for these hours every day. And so they're joy. So at the end of 18 weeks of doing that, or even at the end of each 6 weeks, they're perfectly willing to engage, right? Because they're nourished. I think I talked about individual souls being nourished. The soul is nourished, so everyone's kind of more comfortable. But everything you talk about is part of it. So I tell my students with the interview methodology. You can't just walk up to somebody, I'm doing a project, can I interview you please? Especially not, even with kids and their grandparents. No. I tell them you have to plan way in advance. Because there's relationship building, there's going to be appointment canceling, there's going to be, you ask a question, the answer is over here, right? And as a literary scholar, I understand that as part of the authorship process. as part of the self-authorship process. And so I try to tell students to kind of build in time for all of that, and that your project may not be done in that neat little way by the end of the semester, right? But that is part of the thing that happens in and of itself. But I absolutely, but it is about understanding all parties as having reasons for doing what they're doing, and reading those reasons, and us in the universe figuring out ways, right, to bring the groups together. Yeah, and that's where the innovation comes in, right? So if you say to students, right now, my team is working on the public exhibit for fall 2016, right? They're building relationships. It's going to take a while. My team is working on the replication in terms of the workshop series here in Nashville, right? That's long replication. There's going to be relationship building forever. I have a team in New Orleans that's working right now. And I'm just having to say to them, yeah, it's just, you're just gonna go to church and talk to some people. Hi, how are you doing? Right, your interview is way down the road. So it's changing our understanding of what research is and what our methodology is, and understanding that that there are other things that need to be prioritized.
When I had taught for many
Yeah.
years,
Also,
in an
yeah.
area where many of the grandparents moved to Florida.
Yes,
I had taught in
the distance.
And the kids were very upset when their grandparents left. And on rare occasions when they came back and happened to come in and have a conference with me, I explained this to them, and they,
You lost it.
some of them actually moved back to New York. But it was, I mean, I could never understand this. From my culture, you don't leave your family. And to pick up and move down to an area that's, filled with elderly riding on three-wheel bicycles, we just finished New York. I'm older than most of them down there. But they really didn't understand the loss that it created for the kids.
Because they saw the broader social devaluing and figured, I'm just gonna go do. I mean, my culture is, you see with the Panamanian, I'm born in Jamaica originally, my culture is a migratory culture. So I have, like every Jamaican, family in Canada, family in England, family in Panama, family everywhere. So our cultures and families are always split up. And so our whole existence is in splitting up and figuring out how to maintain connections despite that.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
you just have to. So I've heard things. He's from Franklin County, Tennessee. They still have land there. There's still everybody that we're going to have the 56th reunion of his family in August, which is stunning and amazing to me, being from Jamaica, because we can't get people together to do anything. So his family doesn't do Christmas gifts, right? For my family, Christmas gifts are crucial because that's how you get to show the love. I don't see Aunt C in England. I don't see Uncle Earl in Toronto. But the gift is it. Uncle Earl sends these random emails every day, chain emails about Harvard Medical, whatever. Not personal emails, but that's his way of just of keeping in touch. And so there's a lot of scholarship in Caribbean literature about that. And so there's some communities, Jewish communities, who have had to perfect that because of just separation, just being the way of life.
Even in, I live in Memphis, even in Memphis, you got the disconnect.
Absolutely.
I went back to the neighborhood where I grew up to teach a GED class, but there were no people my age. The older citizens were there. I think the oldest person in our GED class was 59 years old. She understood, but for the rest of us, there was just a disconnect because we left. And we just didn't go back.
My colleague here is from is from Memphis. Mary Frances Berry is from taking the students from Northern Ireland to Memphis tomorrow. So that's going to be really to the slave haven, and there's a lot of laws. But that is the job that we can do as a university, and that is the job I want to involve and have been involved in my students in, is thinking about these questions. Why does this culture seem to have this and this one doesn't, right? What is it about that? And how do we then integrate that into curriculum? Right? How do we integrate that? Because again, we cannot assume the proximity. Right? We cannot assume everybody's going to be able to be close, and there are absolutely challenges, but most people are living their life, and they don't have time to think about the challenges, but we do. We do. That's part of what we can do. We have a whole semester to think about these things, right? A whole several years to think about these things, and you see, I mean, multiple years.
But if you don't have the time.
Huh?
But if you don't have the time,
Well,
then
that's
how
why
do you interact?
Yeah.
What I struggle with lately,
You come
on
to-
the street, talking with people and trying to get to know them quickly, or
Yes.
finding a way to listen to them,
Mhm.
or be sensitive to them. So, that's vital now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe you need to write a fourth book on principles on how to.
I will, like the Dale Carnegie, but for actual people.
Yeah.
I'm from Jamaica, but I'm also from Jersey, so I, that kind of, that pace and people just going. But again,
Yeah.
that's what we can do as universities, provide little modules. So one of the things we're creating is a massive online open course, right? That individuals from anywhere can be involved briefly. We're creating an accessible application through which individuals can call and listen to and contribute to the digital archive. Right?
Because different societies, I'm sure Panama is different than
Absolutely.
Kingston, Jamaica,
Absolutely.
Nashville, Tennessee. As you flow through all those places, you wonder, well, why are people this way, or how? And you don't want to change yourself necessarily, smiling
Exactly.
or greeting, but some places no way, but some
But that's
places
what we can
everybody's
do.
ready.
I have
Yeah,
tenure, I have a
research
job
it.
life, so I can, every
Good.
year I can kind of do have students engaged in asking questions. I will say also the interview methodology, we do not create a standard interview guide for everybody. It's tailored for each community. So part of when I talk with students about interview methodology, first step is what is it that you want to know? Second step is what is it that the people will want to tell you? And that may have no correlation. There may be no overlap between those two. So you start there, and then you create a guide that combines the two. What language will the person speak? And I don't mean language in terms of idiom, but what words will the person use to describe things versus what words will you use? So it's about listening and paying attention.
And this brings to mind one of my favorite lines from the school honor song. So the young lawyer was trying to use all the law, everything
Oh,
he
yeah.
had learned in law, in his schooling, to defend the slaves. And this older guy said, go talk to him and ask him, what is your story? And that's how he won, because he listened to me. And that stayed with me for just struck me. It's like, you listen to someone, you will be able to know more about them, what are the stories, and how to help them.
Absolutely.
And so it was just, this just brings all that back.
Absolutely, but knowing how to listen.
Yeah.
Knowing how to listen and how to pull that out. Again, that's the particular contribution of the university, and as me as a professor, is kind of understanding how to listen. We're just about out of time, but I want to play for you. So we had just want to play the video.
Coming up in ViewCast, hear the creative ways students and seniors are sharing decades of wisdom. See cool inventions by Vanderbilt engineering students that could improve healthcare. And our newest national champs. Hi, I'm Amy Wolf of ViewCast. Can you think of a special story from your grandparents or parents that's been passed down in your family? For some, time and distance make it challenging to learn from our elders. That's why a special immersion program here at Vanderbilt is so significant. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, where do we gain wisdom? In this unique Vanderbilt immersion program, senior citizens teach life lessons by preserving and sharing their personal histories.
This makes me feel good. It just gets down in here.
The program is aptly called Wisdom of the Elders.
It was also a humbling experience that I definitely value.
It evolved from Professor Ifeoma Nwankwo's Voices from Our America series.
The idea is that knowledge does not only exist within the university. It exists in the minds and books of PhDs, as well as in the minds of people who have lived for 85, 90 years.
Digging deep into a sometimes painful past.
You know, a lot of it was hardships, and because life was so different then.
Sharing through stories and art.
Also shows the little cabin that I was born in. Call it humble beginnings. I'm the firstborn of 9 siblings. So life was kind of hard growing up, but it was fun too.
They are innovators. They are teachers. They are learners. The very act of living for that long and having to deal with as many challenges as you do makes you the writer of multiple monographs.
Students Ariel Benjamin and Laura Woodwick are taking a special interest in the project. Ariel and other students travel to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to help collect and transcribe the women's stories.
Wow, I'm a creative writer, so I absolutely love stories.
And helped bring the women here to Vanderbilt to share with students.
I also think it's just a great way to build community. When you share stories orally, it's just different. I don't think there's anything that can replace the live interaction between people, which is why we wanted to bring the event here to get that going.
I think the biggest thing I've learned, especially as a woman, is just like patience. And because they've survived so many different things in these lives, a lot of these women, went through segregation and some issues like that, and just, living in the South during the 60s and 70s.
But through listening, the students say they found true bonds with these women.
There's actually this one woman, Gracie Turner. She is the oldest of the women at the program here, but I connect with her the most, which is really funny. She's just very vibrant. Like, she said she used to dance the jitterbug when she was younger, and that completely encompasses her personality.
And the students are embracing the importance of listening.
Vanderbilt students can relate to always feeling like they have to know the answers or having to be outward or be on top of everything. And this project just gives you a chance to just sit back and really learn and soak in.
Feels good. Feels good. And they just love to, they like to hear, love to hear it. And some of them just sit there with tears in your eyes, I like the setting that we have with the wisdom of the elders, because that's what we do. We talk to each other. We help each other. You learn from them, they learn from you.
Sharing a lifetime of experiences to help these young people become wise themselves. The goal is to make Wisdom of the Elders a model for communities across the country. You can learn more about the Voices from Our America program on voicesamerica.org.
Okay, so thank you very much. And if you're interested in, either replicating or just being involved in some way or just connecting, please feel free to kind of give me your information, because it continues. Like I said, I have tenure. I'll be continuing to do it.
Thank you.
Do that at the end. Yeah.